Hello everyone. In this video we're going to be retouching an image, and as we do I'm going to show you how you can use the clone tool, and then we're going to overlay some text. So let's get into it. I'm going to bring in an image. It's an AI generated image. This is just an image that I created using AI, and oftentimes well, not so much now with the newer AI, but some of the original or the older versions of AI, you would get this, and even some of the ones today, the text doesn't really come out readable. And so what I want to show you how to do is we're going to use the clone tool to create a texture on this part of the image, and then we're going to overlay some of our own text on it. It's something that you may need to do if you work with AI images, or if you use them for articles and things like that. You may want to retouch the image in some way, and this is just one example of how you can retouch an image. And we're going to use the clone tool, like I said, and we're going to put some text. So let's get started. The first thing that we want to do is we want to select this area inside of this rectangle that has all this text that is really not readable. It's illegible because it doesn't really say anything. So we want to put some text in there. For the sake of this demonstration, we want to put some text in there, and we want to have a textured background on there. We want to put a texture on it. So let's start off by selecting the area that we want to operate on. So I'm going to hold down Ctrl and zoom in kind of tight here, tight enough where we can just see the rectangle that we're working on. And I'm going to come up here and choose the free select tool. Okay, and then I'm going to get in here even closer, and I'm just going to click right in the corner of this box. I'm going to go even closer, and I'm going to click there. And then as I come over here, you can see if I hold down my Control key, see how it locks that, it snaps it into a perfect straight line. So I want to hold down Control as I come over here towards the edge of this tool, and I'm going to click there, and then I'm going to let off on Control, and I'm just going to click around the outside edge of this tool. Now if you want to, imagine you're working on a sheet of paper on a flat surface, and you wanted to take your hand and put it down over the top of that paper and slide it to the left. All you have to do while you're using this selector is hold down your spacebar, and you'll see that your cursor turns into a move cursor, and then you can just move your mouse and that drags the paper over, and then when you let off, you're back in your selection tool. So I'm going to just keep clicking around here until I get to this edge, and then I'm going to come out here to the right, all the way out here to the right. Just going to keep sliding, and then I'm going to hold down Control to ensure that I get that straight line, and then I'm going to click at the end of that run, and then I'm going to come over here and click on that edge and scroll down, straight down to the bottom of it, and I'm going to click on that edge, and then I'll come down here to the bottom, and then if I hold my shift key, I can just scroll my mouse wheel up, and that'll make me go left and right, and then I'll let off of the shift key, and then I will come over here. If you need to, you can hit Control here, and that'll lock your line in the horizontal. See how it won't move away from straight. So I'm going to click that corner, and then come up here and click this one right there, And then I'm going to scroll up to the top and hold down Ctrl and click that last one. And now we have a selection that encases the entire rectangular surface. Now, what we want to do is we want to, well, what I want to do is I want to use this texture down here, these pixels down here. I want to use this texture and I want to fill in this whole rectangle with it. But to do that, we have to select, we have to tell GIMP, hey, these are the pixels we want to use. And because we've already done the selection over here, if we change tools, we'll lose our selection. So there is a way that you can save this selection so that you can come back to it later on. And the way I do this in GIMP is I just come up here with, when I have my selection made, I come up to the select menu and I click select, and then come down here and I just go save to channel. And what that does is, if you come over here, this is our layers tab, but if you come into the channels tab, you'll see that we now have a selection mask copy, and it's over here. It's not visible, you can't see it, but there is a mask over the entire section and it has our selection saved there. So what we can do now is we can clear this selection that we have, and then we can move to the next step of the process. So if we come up here to select and we do none, you see how we lost our selection here, but we still have the selection mask stored over here for later. So now what I want to do is switch to the move tool and slide this. Oh, I want to zoom out here and scroll over. I guess what I was doing was moving the, I forgot to put the hand down, and I was just dragging that over like that. So now that we've got everything centered, we're going to scroll in on this texture that we want, and I'm holding down the space bar and just moving my mouse back and forth. The space bar grabs a hold of the image. So I'm going to scroll in here while I hold down Control, and what I want to do is come up here to the clone tool, this tool right here, click it, and now I have the clone tool selected. Now these settings you may have to play with, but the clone tool bases how it acts on what type of brush you have loaded. And I have a brush loaded that does not have a hard edge. It's kind of got a gradient edge, like a feathered edge on it, and the hardness and the force that you use can help you too, or it can hurt you depending on what you're trying to accomplish. So I'm going to leave the hardness down a little bit. I'm not going to leave it at 100. Let's put it at about 65. And the force I want to be 100 because I want this to copy this, or clone these pixels. And I don't know if you can see it, but see how big my brush is? That's the area that we're going to copy. Now what we have to do if we're cloning something, we have to tell GIMP, hey, this is what we want to clone. So this brush is going to help us do that. So I've selected the biggest brush that I can get without getting into a different color here. See these colors? I just want this, and that's still probably a little too big. So I'm going to use my left bracket. Actually, it's not changing it. So I'm going to come over here and click down a few clicks. Go to about 28. That looks about right. So I'm going to sample that selection. But what I have to do in order to, I have to tell GIMP not only what pixels, but I have to tell it what layer I want, and because I'm not on a layer, I'm over here in the channels, it's not going to know. So I got to go back over to the layers and then select the layer that I want to sample the pixels from, and then position this brush over the pixels that I want to sample, and then I'm going to hold down the Control key and I'm just going to click one time. Now it's hard to see, but if I zoom in and you look real close, I don't know if you'll be able to see this on video or not, but right there is an outline that looks exactly like what's around my cursor. I don't know if you can see it, but it goes right around there. So all those pixels are now loaded into our stamp. That's how I like to think of it. Again, I'm holding down the space bar and dragging, and then I'm going to hold down Control and I'm going to zoom out by using my scroll wheel on my mouse to go downward. It's going to scroll us back out. Alright, now before we begin stamping out or filling in this area with that clone brush, what we want to do is come over and reload our selection. So go over to your channels and click the Channels tab, and then hold down Alt and click on this little bitty icon right here, and it loads your selection back like it was before. So now we've got our clone tool loaded, and we've got the selection that we want to work on loaded. Now here is why we're using a selection. What this clone tool does, and I'm going to zoom out so you can see both parts. You can see the part we're sampling is from right here, and we're going to stamp it into this area. But watch what happens if I hold down and I drag this. See what happens? That sample part moves, and we don't want that to move. So what we're going to do is we're just going to click and then let off, and then we're going to slide over to the right and click again. So I'll start right here and I'll click once, and we've got some texture. Then I'm going to come up here and I'll click again, and we got some more. And I'm just going to click through here like this. And what that's going to do is that's going to gradually fill in that texture. And if you notice, when we get to the edge, like if I click out here, it won't let me put any of it out there because that's not a focal area. We haven't focused on that area. We selected this rectangle, so that's the only place that we can stamp any of this texture. But we can stamp it in there, so that allows us to get right up to the edge without messing up the rest of our image. And as long as we don't drag while we're on the down, our samples area will stay the same every time. So I'm going to continue just clicking on this very patiently until I get it all filled in. So I'm going to pause the video and fill the rest of this in. Okay, so I've filled in all of the area, and I basically just kept clicking until I got it all filled in. Now you can see that it's not maybe as even as it could be, so you could go through here and spend some time touching up some of these areas that have maybe too many light spots and kind of add some more layers to it and kind of even it out. But that's gonna serve us for the sake of this video. This is gonna work. So one thing I want to try, and I haven't tried this yet, but one thing I do want to try is I want to see if I can maybe darken this up a little bit, because if I scroll out and look at it in the big picture, I think it would look better if it was dark like this rather than that light color. So let's see if we can darken that up a little bit, and we have a tool that will help us to do that, and it's the Dodge Burn tool, right? So you can see there, you can lighten or darken using a brush, using this dodge and burn tool. So I'm just going to increase the size of the brush by hitting the right bracket, and if you hold it down it will really scale that up. So I'm going to just tap on that, and clearly it's in the dodge, and I want to set it to burn. So if you come over here to the left side of your panel, you see where it's set on dodge. Dodge lightens and burn darkens, and we want to burn the highlights. So what we're going to do is anywhere there's a highlight, it's going to darken it. See how that got darker? I'm just going to tap on that. I'm going to try to do it in an even manner, and because we're still working inside of a selection, it doesn't affect anything outside the selection. So this is a nice little, and you can drag this tool as well. Like if I drag it across here, it's just like coloring in the, so I'm just gonna touch this up and try not to get it too dark, because it's easy to get it looking patchy if you're not careful. But this is a nice way to just darken up part of an image. It just adds, it changes the overall appearance of a section. So it still looks textured. You could come over here and change it to midtones and see what it does on the midtones. It'll kind of darken those up. And you know, you might find maybe dragging is better. And if you get something too dark, you can just switch to dodge and then take your tool down smaller and maybe hit those areas that got a little too dark. Drag through there. Dragging through doesn't seem to be as effective as just kind of hitting the areas that you really want to. So you just switch back and forth from dodge, and you can always change the exposure to not be so drastic. Like this lets you do it a little bit at a time so that you can be more deliberate in what you're doing. I'm just showing you how this works. But photo retouching is a job that takes a lot of patience because of all the detail that you can actually do when you're editing an image. But like I said, you know, if I was doing this for a customer or doing this fixing someone's photo and retouching it, I would be using a lower exposure and I would take some more time. I'm just giving you the idea of how it works here. And you can, you know, you can go through and touch those up and use the color and the dodge, incremental, smooth stroke. You can do all kinds of, like, you want to apply some jitter to it. Right, that breaks it up a little bit, makes it not so, you know, not so much of a pattern. It removes some of the pattern. So now we're getting back to where it was before, but you get the idea. So I might pause the video again and kind of tinker with this so you don't have to sit through it. I'm going to turn that off for now though. So let's see if we can darken some of this up. I'm going to turn this exposure down so it doesn't get so drastic, and then I can just hit it more times. And if you zoom in, you might be able to see a little bit better what's happening. My brush might be too big too. So now I can probably turn the exposure up to get rid of these. It's just these tools work really well, and the concepts are simple enough that they're easy to grasp. You just have to be patient when you're working with them, and like I said, be more deliberate when you're trying to change the colors of some pixels. Part of me wants to move on in the video, and the other part of me wants to get this right. So I'm kind of torn here between two things, but I think if I can get part of it looking the way I want it to, that'll be sufficient to demonstrate to you what you're able to accomplish with just these dodge and burn tools on this. And you can see I've backed off of the exposure, and I'm working with a smaller brush, and I'm just coloring in the areas that are too light, and I'm just darkening them up a little bit at a time and evening out the parts that are not the way I want them to be. And so it just takes time and patience if you're going to do that. So just hitting the light areas. And see, I hit that spot 3 times and now it's too dark. So I have to go back to the dodge and just back it off a little bit, and then go back to burn. Maybe pop it 1 time, and so you get the idea. You can, by just tapping on certain area or dragging to use it kind of as a paintbrush and paint that. You're painting basically a color. You're either adding or removing the shadows. And remember, we're working on the midtones. If I wanted to go back to the shadows and darken those up, I could do that. But working on the highlights might help a little bit here. See these highlights, they're a lot easier to, it looks a lot more even if you just work on the highlights on this particular image. But you get the idea. So now if we zoom out, see how much more even that looks? It still isn't perfect. I'd have to get in here and lighten up some of these areas, but you get the idea. You can take that exposure down and just lighten some of these back up. Get some of that off of there. Makes it look a little bit more blue, doesn't it? So tedious maybe, but you can actually zone out and get in a flow and just, or at least I can, get in a groove and just work on something until you get it just right. But so that's how you would even that out. I'm not going to do the whole thing. What we could do is use the clone tool again, come up here and change our reference from the original and just grab part of this by holding the Control key down. And we need to move out of the channel, make sure we have the layer selected. So I'm going to sample this now, and I'm just going to paint that in over here. And that will maybe make it look a little bit better. And as you get more of the area looking the same, then it gets easier and easier, and it gets quicker, exponentially quicker, when you start getting more area covered. See how I can just now drag and color in everything? And as long as you let off, your reference point goes back to where it was. But so you can really speed things up if you just get a good start and get it colored in. So I'm going to escape out of that, and I'm going to change over to the move tool and back out. And it's not perfect, but you get the idea. It looks enough like this, which is what it was taken from, to look like it belongs there. And that's kind of what I was going for, was a texture that somewhat resembled the texture that's on this spiral part of this image. So now what we want to do is lay our text over this. I'm not going to get carried away and go crazy and put a bunch of text in there. I'm just going to put the channel name in there. And let's see, what color do we want to use for the text? I think to kind of keep with the feel of this, I'm just going to sample this light blue right here. And to do that, I'm going to come up here and choose a color swatch, and that brings up the color picker. And I'm going to just click on this little button right here that's the eyedropper. And what that lets me do is it lets me just take a sample, like I was just sucking up some paint right off of the image, and I get that color. And if I click OK, that becomes the foreground swatch up here in the upper left hand corner. So now what I can do is change my text, my font type, and I just come over here, and where it says monospace, I'm going to back out of that, and I'm going to start typing permanent marker regular, and then I'm going to select it. And it fills in. It should fill in. Sometimes it's a little buggy. I don't know if 3.0.4 does this, but the previous version I was using, which I think was 3.0.2, sometimes it would bug out whenever I tried to do this. But this seems to have worked, so I'm going to change the size, make it a little smaller. I don't want it to be so big. This is real tiny text in the overall scheme of the image that we're using. And I'm going to put it on its own layer. So if I come over here and just add a new layer, and I'm going to fill it with transparency. This might be set to white or some other color, but if you do transparency, it'll allow you to write right over the top of this without see, if I would have had a color, it would have filled in the whole layer with a color. Let's see, we'll go up to 20, and then we'll click on here, and I'm just going to type way out works. And that's still a little small, so I'm going to select, I'm going to do Ctrl A to select all of the text. I'm just going to hold this down until it gets big enough to fill that area. And then I'll go to the move tool and select it. And now I can just position this text where I want it. I think that's nice right there. Now you could do a bunch of other things with this, and I think all that we'll do, because this video is running up on a half hour, I think what we'll do is I'll just put a little bit of a drop shadow on it to make it look like it's standing off of that, to just make it, give it an edge. So with that selected, I'm going to come up here to filters, and I'm going to do light and shadow, do a drop shadow, and then I'm going to ramp up the color, the opacity of that drop shadow way up. I might have to go light and put a glow on it, but I just want it to create an edge. And normally how I do that is I ramp the opacity all the way up with it black, and then I take the blur radius down to nothing. See, you can see it. It's going to work like this. See how it really stands out against that background? And I'm going to take this distance. This is an offset distance. The x-axis is left and right, and the y-axis is up and down. So as we make these go down, see how that shadow gets closer and closer to the text? So we're at 2 there. I think 3 might be what we want. And then if I just select a different layer like the background, it's really subtle. You might not, and we may, yeah, you might not, you don't really consciously notice it, but it does make it look, and I can see some of the, now that we got the text in there, I see some of the, it looks like there are stripes up and down. So obviously we could have worked a little bit more on the background to get it a little more even, but you get the idea. So what we've done now is we have taken an image and we've retouched it and changed it from, let me just bring up this original. So this is the original area. I can't get the whole thing in the shot, but well, now I've got to open it again. So here's the original, and there is our version. Basically, we've filled in that box with a texture, and then we've overlaid some text on top of it. Now, there's more things that you can do when you're overlaying text. You can adjust the lettering, you can space it out, you can write up and down like vertical. You can do all kinds of stuff with the text, but that's stuff for a different video. This video, I just wanted to show you how you could take an image, and with a couple of simple tools, you could make a big change to the image and change the texture. The clone tool and the healing tool, both of those tools really come in handy if you are editing or touching up, retouching a photograph of someone's face. Maybe they had a blemish or something on their face when the photo was taken. You can go in and sample part of their skin from another part of the face and fill in and heal an area. There's another tool called the healing tool that's under the same group. See here, the healing tool. It works similar to that. It heals an image irregularities in a certain area. So, but again, that's something for a different video. But that is how you can retouch a photo and overlay text using GIMP. I hope that helps, and thanks for watching.